Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage, Rob Bernshteyn.
How we doing? All right, I am so excited to introduce our Coupa community to our next guest. But before I bring him out, let's take a look at this short video.
Your dreams will determine your thoughts will determine your words will determine your habits, and your habits will determine your character and your destiny.
I'm so excited to have Keith with us today. You know, Keith is a transformation agent. He is a well-known business leader, both domestically and internationally. He's driven transformations in business, in education, in mentorship, and so much more. Please join me in welcoming Keith to the stage. All right, welcome, Keith. Keith, you know our values very well. You joined me at our all-hands meeting when we had, I think, 27 or 28 people in the company. And we talked about the values we want to have as a company: ensuring customer success, focusing on results, and striving for excellence. So I collected questions from folks at the company that we want to ask you in the context of these values. And the first one is around digital transformation. We're hearing so much about it everywhere. What are your views on the impact of digital transformation in business across virtually all industries?
Well, Rob, first of all, it is an honor to be here, be with you, especially since we got involved so early in the early days, and such a great friend. It's one of the great leaders in Silicon Valley and around the world. Yeah, let's give it up for Rob, man. You know, the digital transformation is impacting all of us. I think we all know that. The thing that's interesting is that I probably spend a third of my time going around talking to CEOs, you know, I would say Global 2000. And for every one of those, either their number one or number two strategic imperative is the digital transformation. And now I've been spending a lot of time with countries on accelerating their digital transformation. I mean, you know, an example would be, I've been spending a lot of time in Japan. And in Japan, it's a national imperative to accelerate their digital transformation because 5 years from now, 30% of their population is going to be over the age of 70. And they have to take care of them. And they don't bring in immigrants. So they have to increase their GNP. Why their working population is going down? They've robotized their factories. They have to increase the productivity of all their office workers, and they've declared war on paper. So, you know, the same is going on around the world. In the United States, we need a national digital strategy to accelerate our digital transformation because it's the number one driver of competitiveness, GNP, productivity, employment, and it's critical to our national security. So, you know, this is the time, this is the place. It's accelerating, and Coupa does an incredible job of that. DocuSign's in many ways a catalyst for that as well. So it impacts all of us, and it will do nothing but increase in terms of its importance.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's talk a little bit about customer success itself. Enterprise software world, there's such a great focus on that area right now.
Yeah.
It's something we care about so much amongst our community of customers that we're building up. How do you think that's changed over time? And just share your views on the importance of customer success.
Yeah, well, you know, all four of the companies I've had the honor of helping build, we always say that we measure our success by the customer success, particularly their metrics. And that's the number one factor in terms of becoming the category king, because the kingmaker is that customer. And it all starts with that customer's value proposition. And, that's the thing in terms of as you build a company where you get alignment with your team, because that mission is all focused on serving the customer. And that's something that can be measured. One of the things that we did at DocuSign, we have we call it our one key metric, our OKM. That is our ultimate leading indicator, and we measure the rate of adoption by successful transactions. Everybody in the company compensated on that. That's really, the driver. And I always think the magic formula with the customers is you bring them in early on in the development of the company. You bring them on early in terms of the development of the product. And, it's management 101. People support what they help create. The best ideas come from the customer.
Absolutely. That's what we've seen here for the last decade, no doubt about it. One of the
I can feel it in this room.
Well, let me tell you, one of the things that we've talked about often is strategy, and you've been involved in helping formulate the strategy of a number of winning companies.
Yeah.
What are the factors in your mind, ultimately? How do you frame the creation of a winning strategy?
Right. So here again, it starts with that customer's value proposition. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, 22 years ago at Ariba, before we even developed a prototype of the product, we talked to a diagonal slice of 60 customers, and that really formed what is that ideal solution. And then from there, I think it's really important to create a category. It's like, well, how do you create why just build a product when you can create a category? Like business spend management. The key is, when you're starting off, I call it, you have to pick a mini beachhead. And the way I define that is it is a multiple dimension slice in terms of industry, vertical, use case, geography that you can own. And it has to be small enough that you can own it, but large enough you can live off of it. And ideally, it's strategic so you can attack adjacent markets. For DocuSign, it was the residential real estate business. So I think that's kind of the early step as you go up what I call the leverage growth strategy. And then the objective, and you've done it at Coupa. You have the businesses and the suppliers, and your ability to build a two-sided network. And when you're building a network, there's three objectives. One, increase the number of nodes. That's the members. That would be the buyer supplier. For DocuSign, it's the businesses and the consumers. And the network effect, the number of those members squared is the power of that network. And then so that's increase the number of the members. The second is reduce the friction between the nodes. And typically that is by ease of use. And it also is by establishing trust. Trust in terms of data privacy, security, enforceability, universality, interoperability. And then the third objective of building that network is maximize the value of each one of those nodes. So that would be all the things that you've added to the product line, whether it's invoicing, expense management, right, the whole payment side. And so as you go up this leverage growth strategy, you can turbocharge it with partners, right? And that's why we're so honored to be a great multidimensional partner with Coupa. And we did that at DocuSign. Actually, we used our strategic equity financing strategy, and we developed 4-dimensional partnerships with companies like Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, SAP, you name it, Intel, Dell, Deutsche Telekom, even FedEx, where they were equity investors, enterprise customers, product integrations, and go-to-market partners. And that creates that network. Then ideally also, you can create an industry standard. So for example, at DocuSign, we help facilitate the XDTM global industry standard, which really are 8 quantifiable factors that define trust. And I found that formula, that's the way to really accelerate the growth of the company and become the category king.
Well, Keith, I'd love the group to get to know you a little bit more. You were wildly successful early in your career, youngest VP at GM, rather. You also went on to build a number of highly successful companies, and then you were kind of taking the time to think things through, and you came back to be the CEO of DocuSign and now the chairman. What made you take on that CEO role?
Well, I never thought I'd go back and do the CEO gig again. It was like I told my wife, this is the least fun job you can have, It's 7 by 24, at least once a month you're going to be under the desk in the fetal position. Well, guaranteed once a quarter when you're public, right? But it's also one of the greatest privileges you can have, and it's really fun. So when I saw DocuSign, and I had taken about 7 years off, I was a full-time soccer dad for 2 weeks of the month. I was chairman of the board of trustees at Purdue, give back to my alma mater, which was great. And I got a call, hey, man, I just wanted to come look at this thing. And this was a guy who was our first customer who, when it became a VC, I go, hey, I'm not going back and doing the CEO. No, I just want to buy a cup of coffee. And I looked at this thing called DocuSign, where probably where most people saw maybe, hey, this would be a feature of Adobe. I said, oh my God, we could build a category and a 2-sided network here. We could just grab the playbook off the shelf, add water, stir, and kaboom, have a big company. Now, wasn't that easy, of course? But I said, maybe that'd be fun to do that again, because if you had to do something all over again, would you do anything different? Well, the answer is always yes. And wouldn't that be fun? And it really was. And when I looked at that, I also said, this is the biggest market I've ever seen, because every company is a potential customer. Every department in those companies are potential customers. Every person is a potential end user. And even my 90-year-old mom back in Rocky River, Ohio, in a bridge club understood the value proposition of DocuSign. They're all real estate agents. It's just... so I guess I couldn't resist, and at the bottom line is working with a great team on a common mission. It's going to change the way business is done, and to simplify people's lives. That's a noble cause. So that probably got me most of all.
A lot of people in the audience may not know that DocuSign went public last week, which was such a proud thing to watch.
Thank you.
How was the excitement of that for you last week different than the number of times before you were at NASDAQ or going through the...
Yeah, so it was my 3rd time on NASDAQ, and it's like having another child. Everyone's is the best. And it's exciting. Because it's one of those rare times in the business world where in one day it's a manifestation of many, many years of hard work by a great team, blood, sweat, and tears. And it was a lot of fun, right? The festivities and all that. Then you go on the 90-day shot clock, of course. But one of the great things was that our team globally around the world focused a week ago last Friday, we went public, on giving back through our DocuSign Impact Foundation. And our foundation got funded that day in a significant way. And the mission of that foundation is to transform people's lives by transforming noble causes. So that's really cool to see. Then I challenged everybody last week, nobody look at the stock ticker, during the week while you're working, which is kind of fun.
So when you reflect on the last few decades and the numerous companies you've built, how do you feel the business world has changed? How has it evolved
Yeah.
from that lens?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely stayed the same more than it evolved in terms of the universal principles. And, at the end of the day, no matter what business you're in the people business. But I think one of the things that's been kind of really refreshing to see, and, I started my career off at General Motors in the late 70s. And here's the thing that's different, and is people really recognize that diversity of thought and people with different temperaments, talents, and convictions, that is the catalyst for genius and really the magic of leadership. And, my dream is that, and I have 5 children, the youngest are 6-year-old twins. My dream someday is that this next generation will be colorblind, gender blind, any difference blind, and they will truly understand and get the diversity of thought is the catalyst for genius. That, I think, is a big thing that has changed.
That's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing that's changed, isn't it? One of the things our community cares about, and one of our values, is this concept of striving for excellence. We recognize that excellence is not fully achievable. It's something that we want to reach for day in and day out. So when you think about transformational leadership, something I know you care about a lot, what are the ingredients, what are the components to real transformational leadership?
Yeah, I think that's transformational leadership. Well, first of all, you can be a transformational leader, not have anybody work for you. And transformational leadership for me is all about making a difference, whether it's a big difference, a little difference, but most of all, meaningful difference. And I'm just an Ohio guy. Transformation is a big word. The way I look at it is change. And change is the most powerful word in any language, because without change, we don't develop, prosper, or grow as individuals. And in the business world, you either change or you die, because you're either growing or you're declining. There's no middle ground. And I think when you make those big, ambitious goals, that stirs the hearts of men and women. So it's like, don't make any small plans. And that transformational thing is where you really test your muscle as an organization and also as an individual.
And when you built teams and you built communities and advisory boards and all constituents around the companies that you served, how did you empower folks to bring out the very best of themselves daily?
Yeah.
Reach for their potential.
And actually, I think that is, that's a good point, because I think actually the definition of a transformational leader is having people accomplish things they never thought were possible, right? It's beyond even bringing out the best in them. They just never thought it was possible. So you expand their comfort zone. And so how do you do that? Well, I think first of all, you make sure that with this great team that you have, that you create a safe environment. Did you guys ever be in like an environment where it's like, oh man, no matter what I say, somebody's gonna jump on me for that? And it's really important. And in all the companies I've built, we've always had a playbook, the vision, the mission, the values, the team rules, the long-term objectives, the strategies, all boiled down to execution. I think I showed that with your team, when there was 23 folks. And the team rules kind of manifestation of the values. And, team rule number 2 is no idea is a bad idea. And you put in parentheses, unless it's the CEO's, which is cool because it's fun to mock out the CEO, and it creates a safe environment. And CEOs have a lot of bad ideas. So I think making that safe environment, but also letting everybody understand the importance of challenging the status quo, number 1. Number 2, it's up to everybody to inspire that shared vision, people support they help create. enable others to act. And what that means, don't just give them the responsibility. Give them the authority to go with it. And who are the best decision makers? You have an A-plus team. I always assume everybody's either smarter than me or just as smart as me. So the people who make the best decisions are the ones closest to the action, whether it's the customer support people, the sales people, the guys who are writing the code. So that's important. And then the fourth one is model the way, because everybody's always watching you, especially the CEO, every move you make. The most powerful form of leadership is leadership by example. And then the fifth one, of course, is encourage the heart. People can deny your logic, but they can't deny your passion.
No question about it. Well, Keith, you continue to serve as an inspiration to me, to our community, to many of the folks that are at Coupa, my colleagues. Thank you very much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Krach.
Thank you. Thanks very much.